Uṣool Al-Ḥadeeth, The Methodology of Hadith Evaluation, by Dr. Abu Ameenah Bilal Phillips. 2. Compilation. 1. Era of the Prophet. During the life of the Prophet ﷺ, there was no pressing need to write down all of his various statements or record his actions because he was present and could be consulted at any time. As a matter of fact, the Prophet ﷺ himself made a general prohibition against writing down his statements which were other than the Quran itself. This was to prevent the possibility of mixing up the Quran with his own words during the era of revelation. Consequently, the greatest stress regarding writing was placed on recording the Quranic verses. However, there are many authentic narrations collected by the scholars of Hadith that prove that Hadith were recorded in writing even during the lifetime of the Prophet ﷺ. For example, Abdullah ibn Umar said, "I used to write everything which I heard from the Messenger of Allah ﷺ with the intention of memorizing it. However, some Qurayshites forbade me from doing so, saying, 'Do you write everything that you hear from him, while the Messenger of Allah is a human being who speaks in anger and pleasure?' So I stopped writing and mentioned it to the Messenger of Allah ﷺ. He pointed with his finger to his mouth and said, 'Write. By him in whose hand is my soul, only truth comes out from it.'" Abu Hurairah said, when Mecca was conquered, the Prophet ﷺ stood up and gave a sermon. Abu Hurairah then mentioned the sermon. A man from Yemen called Abu Shah got up and said, "O Messenger of Allah, write it down for me." The Messenger of Allah ﷺ replied, "Write it for Abu Shah." Al-Walid asked Abu Amr, "What are they writing?" He replied, "The sermon which he heard that day." Abu Qabil said, "We were with Abdullah ibn Amr ibn al-As, and he was asked which city will be conquered first, Constantinople or Rome. So Abdullah called for a sealed trunk and said, 'Take out the book from it.' Then Abdullah said, 'While we were with the Messenger of Allah ﷺ writing, the Messenger of Allah ﷺ was asked, which city will be conquered first, Constantinople or Rome? So Allah's Messenger ﷺ said, the city of Heraclius will be conquered first, meaning Constantinople. 2. Era of the Sahaabah. After the death of the Prophet ﷺ, his sayings and actions took on a new importance because he was no longer there to consult when problems arose. The practice of narration on a large scale started during this period. For example, when the Prophet ﷺ died, the Sahaabah debated about where to bury him. This debate ended when Abu Bakr told them, "I heard the Messenger say, 'No prophet dies, but he is buried where he died.'" Thus, a grave was dug immediately below the bed on which he died in the house of Aisha. In this period, a number of the leading Sahaabah wrote down hadiths of the Prophet ﷺ. The following are just a few of the leading narrators of the Prophet's traditions, who were known to have recorded them in writing. Abu Hurairah, to whom 5,374 channels of hadith narrations are attributed, actually narrated 1,236 hadith. Hassan ibn Amr al-Damri saw many books in his possession. Abdullah ibn Abbas, to whom 1,660 channels of narrations are attributed, used to write whatever he heard, and even employed his slaves to record for him. Abdullah ibn Amr ibn al-As, to whom 700 channels are attributed, was known to have recorded books of hadiths during the Prophet's lifetime, which he titled Saheehs. Abu Bakr was reported to have written down over 500 different sayings of the Prophet ﷺ. Ibn al-Jawzi, who provides a list of all the companions who related traditions, gives the name of about 1,060, together with the number of hadiths related by each. 500 related only one hadith each, 132 related only 2 each, 80 related 3, 52 related 4, 32 related 5, 26 related 6, 27 related 7, 18 related 8, 11 related 9, 60 related between 10 and 20, 84 related between 20 and 100, 27 related between 100 and 500, and only 11 related more than 500, of which only 6 related more than 1,000 hadith. And they are commonly referred to as the Mukaththirun, the reporters of many traditions. Today, a graduate of the College of Hadith in the Islamic University of Medina is required to memorize 250 hadith during each of the 4 years of his study, i.e. a total of 1,000 hadiths. From the above, it can readily be seen that fewer than 300 companions related the vast majority of traditions. 3. Era of the Taabi'oon, 1st century Hijrah. After Islam had spread into the Middle East, India, North Africa, and the narration of hadith had become widespread, there arose people who began to invent hadiths. To combat this development, Caliph Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, reigned 99 to 101 AH, 718 to 720 CE, ordered the scholars to compile the traditions of the Prophet ﷺ. The scholars had already begun composing books containing biographical data on the various narrators of Hadith in order to expose the liars and fabricators. Abu Bakr ibn Hazm, D 120/737, was among those directed by the Caliph to compile the Hadith. Caliph Umar requested him to write down all the hadiths of the Prophet ﷺ and of Umar ibn al-Khattab, and to pay particular attention to gathering the hadiths of Amr bint Abdurrahman, who was at the time the most respected custodian of the narrations of Aisha. Sa'ad ibn Ibrahim and Ibn Shihab al-Zuhri were also requested to compile books, and as Zuhri became the first compiler of hadith to record the biographies of the narrators, with particular reference to their character and honesty. In this period, the systematic compilation of hadiths was begun on a fairly wide scale. However, among the students of the companions, many recorded hadiths and collected them in books. The following is a list of the top 12 narrators of hadiths among the Prophet's companions and their students who had their narrations in written form. Abu Hurairah, 5,374. 9 of his students were recorded to have written hadiths from him. Ibn Umar, 2,630. 8 of his students wrote down hadiths from him. Anas ibn Malik, 2,286. 16 of his students had hadiths in written form from him. Aisha bint Abi Bakr, 2,210. 3 of her students had her hadiths in written form. Ibn Abbas, 1,660. 9 of his students recorded his hadiths in books. Jabir ibn Abdullah, 1,540. 14 of his students wrote down his hadiths. Abu Sa'id al-Khudri, 1,170. None of his students wrote. Ibn Mas'ud, 748. None of his students wrote. Abdullah ibn Amr ibn al-As, 700. 7 of his students had his hadiths in written form. Umar ibn al-Khattab, 537. He recorded many hadiths in official letters. Ali ibn Abi Talib, 536. 8 of his students recorded his hadiths in writing. Abu Musa al-Ash'ari, 360. Some of his hadiths were in the possession of Ibn Abbas in written form. Al-Bara ibn Azib, 305, was known to have dictated his narrations. Of Abu Hurairah's 9 students known to have written hadiths, Hammam ibn Munabbi's book has survived in manuscript form and has been edited by Dr. Muhammad Hamidullah and published in 1961 in Hyderabad, India. 4. Era of the Taab'iut-Taabi'een, 2nd century. In the period following that of the Taabi'oon, the hadiths were systematically collected and written in texts. One of the earliest works was Al-Muwatta, composed by Malik ibn Anas. Other books of hadith were also written by scholars of Malik's time, by the likes of Al-Awza'i, who lived in Syria, Abdullah ibn al-Mubarak of Khurasan, Hammad ibn Salama of Basra, and Sufyan al-Thawri of Kufa. However, the only work which survived from that time is that of Imam Malik. It could be said that in this period the majority of the hadiths were collected in the various centers of Islam. The reason why these 3 generations have been given special consideration is because the Prophet ﷺ was reported to have said, "The best of generations is my generation, then the one which follows them, then the one that follows them." It was through these 3 generations that hadith was first transmitted orally and in writing until they were compiled into collections on a wide and a systematic scale. 5. Era of the Saheehs, 3rd century Hijrah. There arose in the 3rd century scholars who undertook the job of critical research of the hadiths that were narrated and compiled in the first 2 centuries. They also grouped the hadith which they considered to be accurate according to the branches of Islamic law. E.g., from this period is the book Sahih al-Bukhari, containing 7,275 hadith, which al-Bukhari, died 870 CE, chose from 600,000. And Sahih Muslim, which contains 9,200 hadiths, which Imam Muslim selected from 300,000. Besides these 2 works of hadith, there are 4 other works which became famous during this period. They are the 4 Sunan of Abu Dawud, died 889 CE, At-Tirmidhi, died 893 CE, and Nasa'i, died 916 CE, and Ibn Majah, died 908 CE. Stages of writing. 1. The first stage covers the period of the 1st century AH, which began in July 622 CE, or the early part of the century CE. It was the age of the companions and their successors, often referred to as the age of the Sahifa, that is, a sheet or some sort of writing material, such as shoulder blades or parchments, on which a number of hadith were written, e.g. Sahifa Abu Bakr and Sahifa Sadiqa of Abdullah ibn Umar. The aim of the first stage was mainly recording the hadith without any particular format. 2. The second period covers the middle of the 2nd century AH and is referred to as the stage of Musannaf, i.e. classified organized work. The second stage represents a planned compilation of hadith grouped under headings denoting their subject matter, e.g. Muwatta Malik. 3. The third stage is known as the stage of Musnad, compilation of hadith according to the companions' names. This stage began at the close of the 2nd century AH, e.g. Musnad Ahmad. 4. The fourth and most important stage is known as the stage of Saheehs. This stage began during the first half of the 3rd century AH, 9th century CE, and overlaps the period of the Musnad, e.g. Sahih al-Bukhari, Sahih Muslim, and Sahih ibn Khuzaymah. The Companion-Narrators. Abu Hurairah. Abu Hurairah stands at the head of the list of hadith transmitters due to the sheer bulk of his narrations. He had been regarded by the Prophet himself as the most anxious of all Muslims to acquire knowledge of hadith. Belonging to the tribe of Daws, an offshoot of the great clan of Azd, he came to Medina in the 7th year of the Hijrah, and on being told that the Prophet was at Khaybar, went there and accepted Islam. Since that time, and until the death of the Prophet, he kept his company constantly, attending him and memorizing his words during the day, thereby sacrificing all worldly pursuits and pleasures. We are told that he divided his nights into 3 parts, one for sleeping, one for prayer, and one for study. After the death of the Prophet, he was appointed governor of Bahrain for a while during the Caliphate of Umar, and acted as governor of Medina until the early Umayyad caliphs. He died in 59/678. When the Prophet had died and information about religion and legal judgments had to be sought indirectly, Abu Hurairah, who instructed more than 800 students in hadith, poured out the store of knowledge he had so meticulously accumulated. At times he was taken to task for reporting certain traditions which were unknown to other companions, but he would reply that he had simply learned what the Ansar had missed because of attending to their lands and properties, and what the immigrants had failed to learn because of their commercial activities. Once, when he was taken to task by Abdullah ibn Umar for relating a particular hadith, he took him to Aisha, who bore witness to the truth of what he had related. His knowledge and memory were also tested by Marwan, who, having written down some traditions related by him, wanted him to relate the same after a year. He found them to be exactly identical to his earlier narration. Bearing in mind Abu Hurairah's intense dedication to learning hadith, his devotion to the Prophet, and the various tests which were applied to his memory and scholarship by his contemporaries during his life, it is inconceivable that he would have fabricated any hadith. This does not mean, however, that material was not falsely imputed to him at a later date. The fact that he narrated a uniquely large number of traditions itself did make inventing hadiths in his name an attractive proposition. Abdullah ibn Umar. While being the second most prolific narrator of hadith, he was also the son of the second caliph. He had accepted Islam simultaneously with his father and emigrated to Medina with him. He took part in many battles during the Prophet's lifetime and in the wars in Mesopotamia, Persia, and Egypt, but maintained strict neutrality in the conflicts that erupted among the Muslims following the assassination of Uthman. Despite the immense esteem and honor in which he was held by all Muslims, who repeatedly asked him to become caliph, an offer which he refused, he kept himself aloof from fractional strife, and throughout those years led an unselfish, pious life, setting an example of an ideal citizen, just as his father had set an example of an ideal ruler. He died in Mecca in the year 74/692, at the age of 87. Abdullah's long association with the Prophet, his kinship with Hafsa al-Mu'mineen, and with certain other companions offered him a superb opportunity to learn hadith, and his long peaceful life gave him time and leisure enough to teach and spread hadiths among the Muslims who assiduously sought them. He was renowned for the extreme scrupulousness with which he had related hadiths. Ash-Shabi remarks that he did not hear a single hadith from him for a whole year. When he related hadiths, his eyes filled with tears. His activities in the service of Islam, his austere life, his straightforward and honest character, and his careful treatment of the hadiths render the material we have from him of the highest value. Anas ibn Malik. At the age of 10, Anas was presented by his mother, Sulaym, to the Prophet ﷺ, following his migration to Medina. From that time until the Prophet's death, he was his favorite attendant, and afterwards he was appointed by Abu Bakr as a tax collector of Bahrain. Towards the end of his life, he settled at Basra, where he died in the year 711, at the age of over 100. During the 10 years he spent in the Prophet's service, he was able to memorize a large number of his words, of which he later also learned a good deal from Abu Bakr, Umar, and many other companions. His knowledge of hadith was so copious that his death was regarded as a death blow to half of the entire mass of traditions. The traditionists accept him as one of the most prolific narrators of Hadith. Aisha, al-Mu'mineen. Aisha occupies the 4th place among the Muqaddirun. She enjoyed the constant company of the Prophet for about 8.5 years. She died in 57/676 at the age of 65. Aisha was naturally endowed with a retentive memory and a developed critical faculty, having memorized a large number of the ancient Arab poems on which she was a recognized authority. During her lifetime, she was also honored for her expertise in medicine and in Islamic law. Regarding the Hadith, she had not only learned a large volume of these from her husband, she also showed a critical appreciation of them and corrected the mistakes in understanding of many companions. When, for instance, Ibn Umar related that the Prophet had said that the dead are punished in their graves on account of the wailing of their relatives, she pointed out that the Prophet had said that while the dead are punished in their graves for their sins, their relatives wept for them. It was on account of her extensive knowledge of Hadith and Islamic law that even the most important companions sought her advice on legal problems. A long list of those who related Hadith on her authority may be found in Ibn Hajar's book Tahdhib at-Tahdhib. Abdullah ibn al-Abbas. He was born 3 years before the Prophet's migration to Medina and was 13 years old at the time of his death. He was greatly loved by the Prophet, as is apparent from the hadiths which concern him. He died in 68/687 at the age of 71. It appears that despite his youth, he learnt a few hadiths from the Prophet ﷺ himself. Ibn Hajar, quoting Yahya ibn al-Qattan, refers to the assertion that Ibn Abbas related only 4 or 10 traditions from the Prophet ﷺ, and adds that this estimate is incorrect because the Saheehs of Bukhari and Muslim alone contain more than 10 traditions related by him directly from the Prophet ﷺ. There is, however, no doubt that the number of hadiths related by him directly from the Prophet ﷺ is very small in comparison to what he related via other companions. These hadiths he learned through years of hard labor. If I expected to learn any hadith from a companion, he remarked, I went to his door and waited there until he came out and said, Cousin of the Prophet, what brings you here? Why did you not send for me? And I would reply that it was only proper that I should go to him. Then I learned the hadith from him. Ibn Abbas was held in universal awe for his intellectual powers and capacity for memorization. He was entirely devoted to the study of the Quran and the Sunnah, and was loved and respected for his scholarship by all the first 4 caliphs and his contemporaries. He collected a large body of traditions, which he wrote down in books, and delivered lectures on them to his disciples. His tafsir of the Quran, which was handed down by his student Mujahid, is well known and has been referred to by numerous later commentators. Jabir ibn Abdullah. One of the early Medinan converts to Islam, he was present at the second meeting with the Prophet ﷺ at Mecca. He took part in 19 expeditions in the Prophet's company and died in Medina in about the year 74/693 at the age of 94. He learned the Prophet's hadith not only from him, but also from many of his important companions, including Abu Bakr, Umar, and others. He also studied under some of the successors, including the famous Kulthum, the daughter of Abu Bakr. He used to teach hadith regularly in the mosque at Medina. Abu Sa'id al-Khudri. Sa'ad ibn Malik. Another early Medinan convert, his father was killed at Uhud. He himself took part in 12 of the battles fought during the Prophet's lifetime. He died in Medina in 64/683. Like Abu Huraira, he had been one of the people of the veranda, those who lived on the porch of the Prophet's dwelling by the mosque in order to dedicate themselves to an austere life of prayer and learning. He learned the Sunnah from the Prophet, as well as from his important companions such as Abu Bakr, Umar, and Zayd ibn Thabit. He was considered the best jurist among the younger companions. Abdullah ibn Amr ibn al-As. He was an early convert to Islam who had suffered for its cause, had enjoyed the company of the Prophet for many years, and lived long enough after he was gone to transmit the hadiths which he had learned from him. Ibn Amr, although he lived during the period of the civil war, resembled Ibn Umar in keeping himself aloft from fractional strife. He was, however, present at the Battle of Siffin at the insistence of his father. However, he took no part in it, deeply regretting in later life that he had been present at all. His interest in perpetuating the way of the Prophet ﷺ was intense. He wrote down all the traditions which he had learned from him, collecting 1,000 of them in a sahifa which he called a sadiqah. When he settled at Mecca, students of hadith flocked to him in droves. But as he lived for the most part either in Egypt or at Taif, and since he occupied himself more with prayer than with the teaching of hadith, the later generations of Muslims received fewer traditions from him then from Abu Hurairah, Aisha, and others.